What is going on? I want to welcome you from Half Court for today, Friday, March 3rd, 2023. I am your host, Sean Murphy, and today we are here to talk about some Detroit basketball and specifically how in the hell we can get back to our winning ways and winning days. And the Detroit Pistons have a very important offseason ahead of them, and naturally, a lot of questions facing who's going to be around. What players on this team are untouchable? What players on this team are going to help us win going forward? Who are going to be the casualties? Who are going to be the guys that we have to either trade away, let walk away? Who are we going to part with? And so that's exactly what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what players on this team are untouchable, what players on this team will more than likely be moved, what players will be seeing try out for their spots, and perhaps what Troy Weaver could be thinking going forward, because this is a pivotal offseason for this team as as the Pistons have been positioning themselves to take a leap in the 2023-2024 season. And with a Cade Cunningham coming back, from his season-ending surgery and will have the summer to to both get back in shape but also work on his game. You'll have everybody as of right now seemingly healthy going into the next season. You have 27.5% chance to get either Victor Wembanyama or Scoot Henderson in the NBA draft. And then you have a lot of options in free agency with trades as well as potential free agents as well. So if you're the Pistons, you have a lot of reasons to be optimistic about where you are going forward. But at the same time, in order to get to said place, you have to make some decisions about who's going to stay, who's going to go. So let's talk about that. And let's get the obvious right out of the way. There are three players, in my opinion, that I see on this team for at least a decade as of right now. One of them is Cade Cunningham. One of them, in my opinion, is Jalen Duren because of the athleticism he's shown, the rebounding potential he's shown. Everything I've seen from Jalen Duren screams that he can be a star in this league. And then the third player I'm putting up there is Isaiah Stewart. And the reason why I'm putting him up there, and I know a lot of people on Twitter right now are really mad at James for pointing out the fact that Isaiah Stewart has potential, the fact that Isaiah Stewart has shown a lot of promise as a big who can space the floor, the fact that at one point this season he was shooting top 10 three-point percentage for a stretch in December, even though, yes, he did go through a shooting slump, he was also able to shoot his way out of it. I talked to Mike Curtis of the Detroit News, who, by the way, we recorded a pod with. He'll be on next week, and we talked a lot about the importance of Isaiah Stewart's persistence and his continuity of going for that shot and not being swayed by the struggles that he was going through. And I know a lot of people are focused on whenever Isaiah Stewart makes a mistake. I feel like a lot of people are hyper focused on the fact that Isaiah Stewart is probably not going to be a starter, and therefore why are we so invested in him as a player? But all reports, all intel, everything suggests that Isaiah Stewart is the heart and soul and the foundation of this restoration. When you talk about putting together a team that is going to resemble the Detroit Pistons, you need guys who have that toughness, who embody that work ethic, and have every single thing that your program stands for. You need a player on your team that people look up to, a player that everyone gets along with, a player that everyone's connected with, and you need someone that helps keep the ship steady no matter if he's on the court or on the bench. And that's what Isaiah Stewart is. Say what you will about, his hands in some of the areas of his game where, yes, he has to get better and he has to grow and he has to improve. But the reason why I'm so confident, the reason why Troy Weaver's so confident is because if there's anyone that's going to put in the work or work his ass off to go and make that happen, it's Isaiah Stewart. And you can already see he's a radically different player from when he came in as a high intensity, high effort backup big off the bench to now a player who can do things off the dribble, a guy who can have the potential to be a really good floor spacer at some point, a player who can switch on multiple positions on the defensive end. Isaiah Stewart is a player that doesn't demand the ball, that doesn't demand anything other than energy and excellence out of everyone else that's on the court. And he's starting to be more vocal as a leader. He's starting to be more vocal in the media room. Isaiah Stewart has been stepping up in a lot of different ways. So yeah, I am going to bet on that guy. And if you're not going to bet on that guy, then I'm sorry. But he is everything that embodies a Detroit Piston to me. When I see Isaiah Stewart, when I hear Isaiah Stewart, I think Detroit Pistons. And all signs point to the fact that Troy Weaver feels the same. And reports suggest that as long as Troy Weaver's in Detroit, it seems like Isaiah Stewart's going to be in Detroit. So very good chance that he's going to be extended at some point. And James Edwards III actually did a really good mailbag article today talking about, like what potential things could look like as far as extensions for players, like what things could look like. And for Isaiah Stewart, he definitely could be getting some form of extension. He definitely will be on this team. He won't demand big money, but at the same time, whether you have him as a sixth man, whether you have him in the starting lineup, he brings value. He just does. Now, there are two players in that group that are noticeably omitting that a lot of people are going to discuss. One of them is going to be Jaden Ivey. And the reason why I didn't put him in that category quite yet, even though I think Jaden Ivey has been awesome this season, is because of the fact that the Detroit Pistons do have the lottery coming up. And with that, there is the chance that they get the number 2 overall pick. And if they get the number 2 overall pick, and if Scoot Henderson is the selection, I have no idea what that means for Jaden Ivey's future in Detroit. I don't know if they'd be intrigued in running that 3-guard lineup like they talked about with Killian, but instead of Killian, they throw in Scoot Henderson. I'm not sure if you would want to bring one of them off the bench. Would that be a Colin Sexton, Darius Garland situation where you let them both play together, you figure out which player you believe in more, and then you trade the other one? Like, there's a lot of different avenues that the Pistons could go. They could also potentially select Brandon Miller from Alabama, but let's be real, y'all. Let's let him get through his legal stuff first, because we have no idea whether or not Brandon Miller is going to be available on draft night or not. If he is, interesting option. If he's not, obviously, not a route you can go. Scoot Henderson looks way more obvious at that point. So, with Jaden Ivey, he's continued to show a lot of growth and development on the offensive end with his playmaking, specifically with his efficiency and his shot selection has been a lot better as well. When Jaden Ivey plays within the flow of the game, he looks really comfortable. He just still has to be a lot better on the defensive end. I know a lot of people talk about, Jaden Ivey currently being one of the worst defensive players in the league. And I don't know if I'd go that far. I mean, he's certainly not a good defensive player, but at the same time, there's moments where he can have an effect on that end. I just think that he needs to make that much more of a priority. And I think in the offseason, I think he's going to be challenged to, really focus on a lot of the small details and a lot of those aspects of his game. And I think if there's any player that, that can potentially turn that around, and if anyone has the physical gifts to be great on defense, it's Jaden Ivey. I mean, with that wingspan, half of defense, in my personal opinion, and I know that there's a lot more to it. I know there's scheme. I know that, it's team composition. I know that you have to look at, like circumstances, energy, like management, like a lot of different things go into high quality defensive play, both individually and on a team level. But I still believe at the end of the day, a strong part of it begins and ends with the desire and the heart and the intention to go out and defend like that on a night-to-night basis. And listen, I'm not saying it's an easy job for Jaden Ivey, because a lot of times when you're, the 1 or 2 guard, you're having to guard some of the best ball handlers in the league. You're having to be put in difficult decisions. And when you're switching as much as the Pistons are, you're going to be switched onto some defenders that are definitely going to have the upside on you. And since you're a rookie, you're definitely going to get targeted as well. But it's all about how you overcome that. It's all about how you grow through that. And I think, over the next couple of seasons, I think, especially on that side of the ball, that will tell a lot of Jaden Ivey's future. If he can keep up the shooting efficiency as well, then I could definitely see Jaden Ivey being a longtime Piston and a future All-Star as well. Because, man, there have been some flashes where he looks awesome on the offensive end. Now let's move on to the next tier, which I would more so say these are the guys that are fighting for their jobs. These are the guys that are fighting for spots on this team for the long term. The first 2 guys that come up on this tier to me are Marvin Bagley and James Wiseman. 2 guys who play very similar brands of basketball, 2 guys who are very similar on the offensive end. But in my opinion, with James Wiseman, there's that upside of what he can bring on the defensive end, which already is shown, by the way. If you actually look at the Pistons since the All-Star break, they're far closer to average than they are to the 30th worst defense in the league. So the fact that they've been able to be far more competitive in their last 3 games, they've lost by a combined total of 8 points. This team is learning to be better. And honestly, a lot of times James Wiseman can have an effect on the defensive end just with his length and with his athleticism, because good luck going over the top on James Wiseman. It's very difficult to do. We saw that. And quite frankly, there was a really good play in particular down the stretch in the fourth quarter where James Wiseman actually forced a near shot clock violation just because of the effort that he was exuding, because he was going at a line drive at Levine as he was trying to go up to the basket. There's a lot to like with what James Wiseman's done so far. And listen, there's a lot to like from the first 2 games back from Marvin Bagley's return as well. Obviously, the really difficult thing with Marvin Bagley is will he stay on the court? Can we see him put together a consistent run and be healthy? I hope we can see him put something together and be available for every game down the stretch, that we can continue to see him put together solid performances. And listen, I'm not saying that it's either Bagley or Wiseman. I could see a future where both of these guys are on the team, but the likelihood is not high. The reality of it is one of these guys will more than likely be traded at some point. And through 5 games, it's really hard to tell with which one it's going to be. I, for one, am really looking forward to watching both going down the rest of the stretch. They're probably the 2 players I'm most excited to watch going down the stretch because of the unknown factor, because of the fact that they are going to have to go out there and compete. And with James Wiseman, I mean, he's just exceeded all of my expectations each and every game I've seen him. So I'm just excited to see what 20 games of James Wiseman getting these minutes can look like, because again, he just hasn't had this consistent opportunity. Neither of these guys have. So let's just let them run. Let's just let them hoop. Let's see what they can do. And that's a good position to be in if you're Troy Weaver, because you have 2 prospects that you're interested in. You have essentially another month of consequence-free basketball with these 2 guys who can just go out there and put every single thing into it. Who knows? Competition generally breeds the best out of people. So I, for one, am excited to see that battle. Killian Hayes, Hamidou Diallo, 2 guys that I also put in this category. Hami, I would say I have really liked what he has become as a player this season, because he just looks like a player and a person that's become sure of himself and has found what he's good at. I know one aspect that's been pointed out a lot is Hamidou Diallo is that he's essentially, stopped shooting threes. He's averaging a career high 58% from the field. He's become really effective in the mid-range and also just so good at getting to the basket. When Hamidou Diallo is locked in on the defensive end, he can wreak havoc and do a lot of different things that few players can do, and especially on this roster. And so I've been blown away by the growth of Hamidou, especially from when we first acquired him, because I'm not going to lie, when we traded for him back in 2020, 2021, I thought it was going to be similar to a Dennis Smith Jr. situation. I thought it was going to be, let's see what Hamidou can do for the rest of the season. And as far as if he's going to be here long term, I have no idea. I think Hamidou's made a stronger case than almost anybody on this team to have a spot going forward. But the reason why he's in this tier is because the reality is, as good as Hamidou Diallo has been, the Pistons are going to have money to go out and potentially get players that are just as good, if not better. And that's the business. In the reality of it is, if you keep getting more guards in this system, the playing time is going to definitely be harder to come by. The Pistons will definitely have to address the wing position this offseason. And if they do, that will definitely be a position that will be hard to come by for minutes. But at the same time, if Hamidou's going to keep bringing that effect on the defensive end, there's a lot to like. Now, granted, if you could go out and get someone who could also shoot the 3 and do a lot of those things that Hamidou are doing as well. I mean, I know potential free agents this summer. I think like a Cam Johnson, is someone that James references like a possible target for them this offseason, which I personally think would fill that role really well. At the same time, there could also be the possibility of that player being acquired via trade too. I mean, the thing of it is the Pistons, for the first time in a long time this offseason, will have options. I think Hamadou's a really good option. Killian, on the other hand, I think he has another season to, essentially audition for the long-term backup point guard role on this team, and maybe even just a backup point guard role as a whole in this league. I still really like what Killian can do on the defensive end. I still love the energy that he brings and the intensity that he can bring on that side of the ball. And listen, as long as you can defend in this league, like that is a great first start. If he can start to actually, shoot a little more consistently, become a more consistent catch and shoot 3-point shooter, at the very least get his percentages up to 40 or 50% shooting from the field, like maybe 5 or 6 attempts a game. That's a lot better than whatever is going on with Killian right now. And I know we even talked about this with Mike as well on the podcast about how, Dwayne Casey said that Killian needs to find his joy for the game again. And I understand when you're, going through all these struggles, it's really difficult to continue to have that joy. But at the same time, if he's going to be successful, I hope he can find that joy and that positivity and perhaps lead a special second unit in Detroit. Again, I know people are fixated on where Killian was drafted, but we're way past that now. We're with guys like Jaden Ivey, with guys like Cade Cunningham, Jalen Duren, James Wiseman, Isaiah Stewart, the top pick that you're going to have this offseason. You have far too much value in the building now to worry about where Killian Hayes was drafted. You have to make a decision at some point that's best for the team. Is he going to be a valuable backup point guard, or do we need to upgrade that position? Now, real quick, the final tier, the players that will not be here, the guys that I just do not see having a future on this team. And for me, there's 2 players that I hover to right away. And I'm sorry, guys, I appreciate your service, but Rodney McGruder, Corey Joseph, it's been a fun ride. I know Corey Joseph has been a fan favorite for the last few years now. All joking aside, I know he's been a person of a lot of controversy in the Pistons world ever since arriving. And as valuable as I think he's been at times, I just don't see an avenue for him to be on this team next season, especially with Killian assuming that backup point guard role when Cade comes back. I also don't see a world where Rodney McGruder is on this team either. I think Isaiah Livers is a guy who needs to continue to fight for his spot. I would not put him in this tier whatsoever. I know the organization is very high on him, but really the only 3 players that I am certain will not be on this team next season is RJ Hampton, Rodney McGruder, Corey Joseph. But with that, what are your thoughts? What players would you like to see on this team next season? Who do you think are core pieces to build around? Let me know in the comment section down below. But also, be sure you click that subscribe button so you're not missing any of the content we have here on From Half Court. But that is going to do it for today, folks. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you subscribe.